The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward into darkness, its walls carved from a single piece of crystallized starlight. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, their forms ranging from gas clouds to silicon-based giants. At the center of it all stood the Morvath delegation, their purple scales gleaming under the chamber's lights. Emperor Thralvex raised his forearms in a gesture of dominance. His empire controlled more space than any other civilization in recorded history. 40% of the known galaxy bore his flag, and today he would claim more. "The matter is simple," Thralvex announced, his voice booming through translation devices. "We have discovered a colony world along our expansion route. The inhabitants claim to be human. They refuse to acknowledge our rightful claim to the system. We will take what is ours." A door at the far end of the chamber slid open. Every eye turned to watch a single figure walk down the long aisle. She wore a simple gray uniform with no decorations except for a small patch on her shoulder, showing a blue and green planet. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her face showed no emotion. Admiral Kira stopped at the speaker's platform. She was small compared to most species in the chamber, barely reaching the chest height of the average Morvath soldier, but something in her eyes made the room fall silent. "My name is Admiral Kira of the Terran Defense Force," she said. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I bring a message from Earth Command. Terran space is prohibited. Turn back now." Laughter erupted from the Morvath section. Emperor Thralvex's chest heaved with amusement. "Prohibited? By whose authority? Humanity has been in space for barely 500 years. You control a handful of systems. You have no fleet that can challenge the Empire." Kira's expression did not change. "I am not here to challenge you. I am here to warn you." She pressed a button on her wrist device. A holographic display appeared above the chamber, showing 3 different star systems. 200 years ago, the Felkoth hierarchy attempted to claim a human mining colony in the Arcturus sector. They sent a battle group of 300 ships. The hologram showed the Felkoth fleet entering the system. Then it showed nothing but debris. No Felkoth ship returned. The hierarchy fell within 10 years due to economic collapse. The chamber grew quieter. Kira continued. 130 years ago, the Kresh Dominion declared war on humanity over disputed asteroid mining rights. They deployed their entire fleet, over 2,000 vessels. The hologram changed, showing another massive fleet, then showing wreckage. The war lasted 4 days. The Kresh Dominion no longer exists. Emperor Thralvex leaned forward. Ancient history. Tales told to frighten children. 20 years ago, Kira said, her voice growing colder, the Phazon Collective attempted to seize a human research station in the Kepler system. They believed humanity's warnings were empty threats. They sent 500 ships. The hologram showed a 3rd fleet. Then nothing. The Phazon Collective surrendered unconditionally within 3 weeks. They are now a protectorate state under human supervision. High Counselor Vextharn, the Emperor's chief military strategist, stood up. His scales were darker than his Emperor's, marked with scars from countless battles. "These are convenient stories with no verification. We have studied humanity. You have perhaps 2,000 ships total, spread across your territories. We have 12,000. Your technology is adequate but not superior. Your soldiers are brave but few. You cannot threaten the Empire." Kira turned to face him directly. "You are correct about our numbers. You are wrong about everything else." "Then explain," Vextharn demanded. "Why should the mighty Morvath Empire fear a species that controls less than 1% of the galaxy?" "Because we chose to control 1%, Kira replied. "While your empire spread thin across the stars, humanity fortified. While you built colonies on 1,000 worlds, we built weapons. While you celebrated expansion, we perfected war. Terran space is prohibited not to protect us, High Counselor. It is prohibited to protect you." The chamber erupted in noise. Some species laughed. Others looked uncertain. The Morvath delegation seemed insulted by the suggestion that they needed protection from anyone. Emperor Thralvex stood and silence returned. "I have heard enough. The Morvath Empire acknowledges no prohibition from a minor species. We will take the colony world of New Busan. If humanity wishes to stop us, you are welcome to try." Back on Earth, in a bunker buried 3 miles beneath the Atlantic Ocean, Commander Do-hyun received the transmission from Admiral Kira. The message was simple. They refused the warning. "Prepare Protocol Omega." Do-hyun had hoped it would not come to this. He was a tactical officer, trained in strategy and warfare, but he took no pleasure in what was about to happen. He had studied the Morvath Empire for years. They were not evil, just arrogant. They believed their size and strength made them invincible. They were about to learn a terrible lesson. He opened a secure channel to the outer colonies. All stations, this is Earth Command. The Morvath Empire has rejected diplomatic resolution. They are mobilizing their 7th Fleet toward New Busan. We are now at Condition Omega. Authorization code, Sierra Tango 77 Black. Across human space, thousands of officers received the same message. On hidden military stations, weapon systems powered up. Ships that had been waiting in dark space for decades activated their engines. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come check their equipment one final time. The Morvath 7th Fleet was already moving. 800 warships, each one larger than any human vessel, began their journey toward New Busan. Their crews celebrated, certain of easy victory. They had heard the stories about human warnings, but they did not believe them. The Empire had never lost a war. They would not lose this one. Admiral Fleetmaster Thralcor commanded the 7th Fleet from his flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Crushing Tide. He read the intelligence reports about humanity with amusement. Small ships, limited technology, no major victories against peer opponents. The report suggested humanity relied on ambush tactics and defensive positions. Once his fleet arrived in overwhelming force, the humans would have no choice but to surrender. He sent a message to Emperor Thralvex. We will reach New Busan in 6 days. Expect a short battle followed by immediate surrender. Glory to the Empire. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, Admiral Kira prepared to leave. The Council had officially condemned the Morvath action, but would take no steps to prevent it. That was expected. The galaxy's species had grown comfortable with the Empire's dominance. They would not risk conflict over a single human colony. Before she left, a representative from a neutral species approached her. Admiral, a question if I may. If humanity is as dangerous as you claim, why do you hide? Why not demonstrate your strength openly? Kira looked at the representative for a long moment. Because the galaxy is not ready to see what we truly are. Because once we show them, things can never go back to the way they were. Because we remember what it was like when we turned our weapons on each other. And we do not wish to see that horror spread to the stars. Then why allow this conflict? The representative asked. Because they were warned, Kira said simply. They made their choice. Now they will face the consequences. She walked out of the chamber and boarded her ship. As she left orbit around the Council world, she sent one final message to Earth Command. No survivors. Let this be the last time we have to teach this lesson. In the depths of space, the Morvath 7th Fleet continued toward New Busan, unaware that they were sailing into history as the Empire's greatest mistake. The New Busan system looked peaceful from space. A yellow sun warmed 3 planets with the colony world sitting comfortably in the habitable zone. 2 million humans lived on its surface, farming and mining and building lives far from Earth. They had received evacuation orders 3 days ago, but most chose to stay. They trusted their military to protect them. Fleetmaster Thralcor studied the system scans from his command chair. The Crushing Tide led 799 other warships into formation. They emerged from hyperspace in perfect order, a demonstration of Morvath military precision. His tactical officers reported no significant military presence. A few orbital stations, some mining platforms, no fleet. They ran, one of his officers said with satisfaction. The humans heard we were coming and fled. Thralcor was not so certain. The intelligence reports had been clear about human defensive capabilities. He expected more resistance. Still, perhaps the warnings had been exaggerated. Perhaps humanity knew better than to fight. A communication buoy activated near their formation. A recorded message played in standard galactic language. You are entering prohibited Terran space. This is your final warning. Leave now or be destroyed. This message will not repeat. Laughter spread across the bridge. The idea that 800 warships could be destroyed was absurd. Thralcor ordered the buoy destroyed. A plasma bolt reduced it to atoms. On the surface of New Busan, Colonial Administrator Yunji watched the Morvath fleet on her displays. She had been born on Earth but chose to make her life in the colonies. She loved the frontier, the sense of building something new. Now she watched an empire try to take it all away. They destroyed the warning buoy, her assistant said nervously. Yunji nodded. They always do. Contact the defense coordinator. Tell them the fleet has made their choice. In the dark space beyond the second planet, something stirred. The TDF Incheon had been waiting in complete silence for 2 days. Captain Ji-won sat in her command chair, watching her displays with calm focus. Her ship was a destroyer, small compared to the Morvath dreadnoughts. But size was not everything. All stations report ready, her executive officer reported. Very good, Ji-won replied. Take us in. Standard approach. Let them see us. The Incheon activated its engines and moved toward the Morvath fleet, 1 ship against 800. It seemed like suicide. Thralkor watched the human vessel approach. It was perhaps 200 meters long, smaller than his fleet's escort frigates. A single destroyer coming to challenge his entire fleet. Was this a joke, an insult? They are hailing us, his communications officer reported. Put it through. Captain Ji-won's face appeared on the main display. She looked young, her expression neutral. Morvath fleet, I am Captain Ji-won of the Terran Defense Force. You have entered prohibited space. You have ignored our warnings. This is your final chance. Leave now or be destroyed. Thralkor could not help but laugh. Captain, I command 800 warships. You have 1 small destroyer. You cannot possibly believe you can stop us. I don't need to stop you, Ji-won replied. I just need to give you 1 last chance to survive. Will you leave? We will not, Thralkor said firmly. Stand down or be destroyed. Ji-won nodded slowly as if she had expected this answer. Then may your gods have mercy on you. Because we won't, the transmission ended. Thralkor ordered all weapons to target the destroyer. Fire. The space around the Incheon filled with plasma bolts and missile trails. Enough firepower to crack a moon converged on the small human ship. But the destroyer was no longer there. It vanished, leaving no trace on any scanner. Where did it go? Thralkor demanded. His tactical officer checked his displays frantically. I don't know, sir. It just disappeared. Our sensors show nothing. Then space itself seemed to ripple. All around the Morvath fleet, human ships appeared. They had been there all along, hidden by stealth technology the Empire had never encountered. 200 vessels, each one smaller than a Morvath cruiser, but armed with weapons that made no sense. Lieutenant Minho sat at his weapons console aboard the Incheon, his fingers moving across the controls. He had trained for this moment his entire career. He knew the Morvath shields were strong, but designed for conventional weapons. What humanity had developed was anything but conventional. Quantum. Torpedoes ready, he reported to Captain Ji-won. Fire. At will, she ordered calmly. The torpedoes that left the Incheon did not travel through normal space. They used quantum entanglement, existing in 2 places at once until observation collapsed their wave function. To the Morvath, it appeared that weapons simply materialized inside their shields, inside their hulls, inside their reactor cores. The first wave destroyed 200 Morvath ships in 30 seconds. They exploded from within, their shields useless against weapons that bypassed conventional space. Thralkor watched in horror as a quarter of his fleet died in less than a minute. Return fire. All ships, evasive maneuvers. But the human ships moved like nothing the Morvath had seen before. They accelerated at speeds that should have killed their crews. They changed direction without slowing down. They appeared on sensors, then vanished, then reappeared somewhere else. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter. Captain Ji-won coordinated the human fleet with quiet efficiency. Each destroyer knew its targets. Each frigate executed its role perfectly. They had practiced this scenario 1,000 times in simulations. The Morvath ships were larger and more numerous, but they fought using tactics developed for conventional warfare. Humanity had moved far beyond conventional. Another wave of quantum torpedoes flashed across space. Another 150 Morvath vessels exploded or went dark, their systems destroyed. Some tried to flee but found their hyperspace engines disabled by electromagnetic pulses that shouldn't exist. Some tried to surrender but received no response. The human ships simply continued their methodical destruction. In 15 minutes, 600 ships of the Morvath 7th Fleet had been reduced to wreckage or floating hulks. The remaining 200 gathered around the crushing tide, trying to form a defensive position. Thralkor sent distress signals, but they would take days to reach the Empire. He tried to negotiate, but the human ships did not respond. Then the humans deployed something new. Space around the Morvath survivors began to distort. The fleet's sensors went wild, showing impossible readings. They were trapped in a quantum net. a bubble of altered spacetime that prevented any escape. Captain Jiwan's face appeared on Thralcor's display once more. Fleet Master, you were warned. Your Emperor was warned. Your entire species was warned. Terran space is prohibited. You chose to violate that prohibition. Now you face the consequences, please, Thralcor said, his pride broken. We surrender. Have mercy. Jiwan studied him for a long moment. Mercy? You came here to conquer a peaceful colony. You ignored every warning. You laughed at our diplomats. And now you ask for mercy, she paused. Very well. I will show you the mercy you did not plan to show our people. She gave an order and the quantum net released one ship, a damaged frigate barely holding together. That ship will be allowed to leave. It will carry news of what happened here back to your empire. The rest of your fleet will be destroyed. You have 5 minutes to evacuate your crews to that one vessel. After that, we fire. Thralcor wanted to argue to protest, but he saw no option. He gave the order to abandon ship. Thousands of Morvath soldiers crowded into the single frigate, packing it far beyond safe capacity. When the 5 minutes ended, Captain Jiwan gave the order, and the remaining 199 Morvath warships were systematically destroyed. The frigate was released from the quantum net. Its damaged engines struggled to reach hyperspace. As it prepared to jump, Jiwan sent one final message. Tell your Emperor this was mercy. Tell him that if he sends another fleet, there will be no survivors to carry the tale home. Tell him that Terran space is prohibited for a reason. Tell him he was warned. The frigate jumped to hyperspace, carrying its cargo of traumatized survivors back toward the Empire's core worlds. On the surface of New Busan, Administrator Yunji watched the debris field expand across the system. She felt no satisfaction, only sadness that it had come to this. They never listen, she said quietly to her assistant. We always warn them. We always give them a chance, and they never listen. Captain Jiwan sat in her command chair looking at the wreckage floating in space. Each of those ships had carried hundreds of lives. Thousands dead because their emperor was too arrogant to believe a warning. She had done her duty, but she took no pride in it. All ships maintain formation, she ordered. Begin recovery operations for any survivors in emergency pods. Send medical teams. Her executive officer looked surprised. Captain? Our orders were no survivors. Our orders were to destroy their fleet, G1 corrected. The fleet is destroyed. Any crew members who survived in pods are no longer combatants. We will treat them according to the conventions of war. It was a small mercy, but it was all she could give. The message had been sent. The galaxy would soon learn what happened when an empire ignored humanity's warnings. The war had begun. The damaged Morvath frigate limped into Imperial space 3 days after the massacre at New Busan. Its engines were failing, its hull breached in a dozen places, and its cargo hold packed with survivors who had watched their entire fleet die in minutes. When the ship's distress call reached the capital world, the Empire's leadership refused to believe the report. 800 ships destroyed by 200 smaller vessels, weapons that bypassed shields, technology that seemed to break the laws of physics. It had to be a lie, a mistake, or a coward's excuse for failure. Emperor Thralvex ordered the survivors brought before him to explain their failure. Fleetmaster Thralcor stood in the throne room, his scales dull with exhaustion and shame. Around him stood the Empire's military leadership, their faces showing a mixture of anger and disbelief. He told them everything: the quantum weapons, the stealth technology, the cold efficiency of the human attack, the mercy that allowed him to survive only to carry a warning. Impossible, Grand Marshal Kevthor declared. He was the supreme military commander of the Empire, a veteran of 50 campaigns across 2 centuries. Our intelligence clearly shows humanity's technological level. They cannot have weapons like this. You were ambushed. You made tactical errors. You panicked. Thralcor's hands trembled with suppressed rage. I did not panic. I watched 600 ships die in 15 minutes. I saw weapons appear inside our shields, inside our hulls. I saw space itself bend to trap us. This was not panic, Marshal. This was humanity showing us what they truly are. Emperor Thralvex rose from his throne, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of absolute authority. The Morvath Empire does not lose wars to minor species. We control 40% of the galaxy. We have subjugated hundreds of worlds. We have defeated every enemy we have ever faced. We will not be humiliated by these humans. High Counselor Vextharn stepped forward. My Emperor, perhaps we should reconsider. 3 species before us ignored humanity's warnings. All three were destroyed or broken. Perhaps the humans truly are dangerous. 3 species weaker than us, Thralvek snapped. They spread themselves thin. They fought with inadequate forces. We will not make their mistakes. We will crush humanity with such overwhelming power that their technology will not matter. On Earth, in a laboratory buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Soman studied biological samples and cultural data on the Morvath species. She was a xenobiologist who had spent her career understanding alien psychology. Now Earth Command needed her expertise to predict how the Empire would respond to their defeat. They will attack again, she told the assembled military commanders via holographic conference. Morvath culture values strength above all else. Backing down after a defeat is considered worse than dying in battle. The Emperor cannot afford to appear weak or he will lose control of his empire. Commander Do-hyun listened carefully from his position at Earth Defense Headquarters. He had hoped the demonstration at New Busan would be enough, but Dr. Soman's analysis matched his own predictions. How large a force should we expect? Everything they have, Dr. Soman replied. They will mobilize the largest fleet in their history. They will recruit allies. They will commit total war because anything less is seen as cowardice in their culture. In neutral space far from Earth or the Morvath core worlds, Agent Hyunwoo operated under deep cover. He was an intelligence operative who had spent 15 years embedded among the galaxy's information brokers and mercenary companies. His network of contacts stretched across dozens of species and hundreds of worlds. Now he sent urgent reports back to Earth. The Empire is recruiting, his encrypted message read. 6 species have agreed to provide ships and soldiers in exchange for territory and trade rights. The Morvath are offering huge payments and promises of shared human technology after their victory. Current estimates suggest a combined force of at least 5,000 warships. They plan to strike at Earth directly, believing that destroying the human homeworld will end the war. Commander Do-hyun read the report with grim satisfaction. The Morvath were doing exactly what humanity expected. They were gathering every ship they could find and pointing them all at Earth. It was a strategy born of arrogance and pride, and it would be their final mistake. Prepare the Sol Defense Grid, he ordered. Authorization code Tango Romeo 99 Red. Full activation of all hidden assets. This is not a drill. Across the solar system, stations that had pretended to be research facilities or mining operations revealed their true purpose. Saturn's rings were not natural. They were millions of autonomous weapons platforms placed over 2 centuries. Jupiter's atmospheric research stations were actually planetary defense fortresses. Mars had underground hangars large enough to hide 1,000 warships. The asteroid belt contained fabrication facilities that could produce battle drones faster than any enemy could destroy them. Earth itself was ringed with defense satellites. 50,000 platforms, each capable of cracking a planet's crust. The moon was hollow, converted over centuries into a massive weapons foundry and command center. Even Venus, inhospitable and ignored by most species, held fusion batteries powerful enough to vaporize fleets. While other species had spread across the galaxy, building colonies and trading posts, humanity had turned its home system into the most heavily fortified location in known space. They had learned from Earth's own bloody history. They knew that the best defense was making attack impossibly costly. The Morvath fleet began to assemble at staging points near the border of their territory. 5,000 warships from 7 different species, the largest military force ever gathered in galactic history. Soldiers from a dozen different worlds trained together. Supply lines stretched across hundreds of light years. Battle plans were written and rewritten. The Empire's propaganda machine worked overtime, telling citizens that humanity would be crushed, that their advanced technology would be captured, that the Empire would emerge stronger than ever. Grand Marshal Kevthor commanded the fleet from his flagship, a super dreadnought 3 kilometers long called the Imperial Will. He studied reports on human defenses around Earth and found them laughable. A few thousand satellites, maybe 100 ships in the home fleet, some asteroid fortifications, nothing that could stand against 5,000 warships. The humans focused all their strength on that one ambush at New Busan, he told his officers. They sacrificed defensive capability for a single attack. Now their homeworld is vulnerable. We will hit them with such overwhelming force that their tricks will not matter. We will burn Earth and scatter humanity to the winds. Emperor Thralvex addressed the fleet before they departed. His message was broadcast to every ship, every soldier, every citizen of the Empire. Today we teach the humans the price of defying us. Today we show the galaxy that the Morvath Empire cannot be challenged. Today we prove that strength and numbers triumph over technology and deception. Go forth and claim victory. The fleet entered hyperspace, beginning its journey toward the Sol system. 5,000 ships carrying 1 million soldiers, the largest invasion force in history. The Empire's pride and power concentrated in a single massive strike. They expected to find Earth defended by a desperate, undermanned fleet. They expected a hard fight followed by inevitable victory. They had no idea they were sailing into the most elaborate trap humanity had ever constructed. Commander Do-hyun watched the fleet's progress on strategic displays. They would arrive in 4 days. 4 days to prepare for the moment humanity had spent 4 centuries building toward. 4 days until the galaxy learned why Terran space was prohibited. All stations report ready, his tactical officer informed him. Good, Do-hyun replied. When they arrive, let them get close. Let them think they are winning. Let them push deep into the system, and then show them what we truly are. Agent Hyunwoo sent one final report from neutral space. The fleet has departed. All mercenary forces committed. The Empire has nothing left in reserve. They are betting everything on this single attack. If they lose, they will have no military capability left to defend their own territory. On Earth, Dr. Soman watched the fleet approach on long-range sensors. She felt sadness for what was about to happen. The Morvath were not evil, just arrogant. They could not imagine a universe where bigger and stronger did not automatically win. They were about to learn that humanity had spent its entire existence proving that the clever could defeat the powerful. They were warned, she said quietly to herself. We gave them every chance. They chose this. The fleet crossed into the outer edge of the Sol system. Their sensors showed them what they expected to see. A modest defensive force, some scattered stations, nothing that seemed dangerous. Grand Marshal Kevthor ordered the fleet forward. They would strike at Earth, destroy its defenders, and force humanity to surrender. The trap was set. The bait was taken. Now humanity would demonstrate why they had spent 400 years fortifying a single solar system, instead of spreading thin across the stars. The galaxy was about to witness the true meaning of Terran space is prohibited. The humans were not hiding. They were not running. They were waiting. And they were ready. The Morvath fleet entered the Sol system like a conquering army. 5,000 warships spread across space in perfect formation, their weapons charged and shields at maximum. Grand Marshal Kevthor stood on the bridge of the Imperial Will, watching Earth grow larger on his displays. The blue and green world looked peaceful, almost defenseless. His sensors detected perhaps 200 human ships in orbit, along with the expected satellites and stations. Pathetic, one of his officers muttered. They cannot even muster 1,000 ships to defend their home world. Kevthor felt a moment of unease. The humans had seemed so confident in their warnings. Why would they allow their capital to be so lightly defended? But he pushed the doubt aside. His fleet outnumbered the humans 25-1. Even with their advanced weapons, they could not overcome such odds. All ships advance to attack formation, he ordered. Prepare to engage their orbital defenses. The human fleet did not move to intercept. Instead, the ships began to fall back, retreating toward Earth's orbit. It looked like they were running, unable to face the massive invasion force. The Morvath commanders celebrated. Their enemy was broken before the battle even began. On Earth, in the command center beneath the Atlantic Ocean, Commander Do-hyun watched the enemy fleet push deeper into the system. They had passed Neptune, then Uranus. Now they were approaching Saturn. Exactly as planned. They are in position, his tactical officer reported. All Saturn defense platforms locked on target. Hold, Do-hyun ordered calmly. Let them get closer. Let them commit fully. Fleet Admiral Sunwoo commanded the human home fleet from his flagship, the TDF Sol. He was a veteran of the Phazon War, one of the few human officers who had actually fought in open battle against another species. Now he watched the largest fleet in galactic history approach his position. His 200 ships seemed insignificant compared to the enemy's numbers. That was intentional. Admiral, they are past Saturn, his communications officer reported. They are still advancing. Good, Sunwoo replied. Maintain the retreat. Make it look convincing. The Morvath fleet pressed forward, sensing victory. They pushed past Saturn's orbit without incident. The famous rings of the gas giant seemed peaceful, just clouds of ice and rock drifting in space. Their sensors detected some unusual energy signatures, but nothing that seemed threatening. Then Commander Do-hyun gave a single order. Saturn Defense Grid activate. Fire at will. The rings of Saturn exploded into motion. What the Morvath had assumed were natural formations were actually millions of weapons platforms, each one equipped with railguns, lasers, and missile launchers. They had been placed there over 2 centuries, carefully positioned to create a killing field that no fleet could survive. The first volley destroyed 400 Morvath ships in seconds. The platforms fired from every angle, creating overlapping fields of fire that left no escape route. The enemy fleet's shields held for a moment, then collapsed under the sustained bombardment. Ships exploded or went dark. Debris spread across space. The perfect formation shattered into chaos. Evasive action, Kevthor screamed. Return fire on those platforms. But the platforms were small, numerous, and automated. Destroying one made no difference when 10,000 others continued firing. The Morvath fleet tried to retreat back past Saturn, but found more platforms activating behind them. They were trapped in a sphere of weapons fire. Captain Ji-won watched from the Incheon as the Saturn grid did its work. She had argued for mercy after New Busan, saving survivors in escape pods. But there would be no mercy today. Earth Command had been clear. This had to be a demonstration that the galaxy would remember for 10,000 years. Captain, Jupiter stations are reporting ready, her executive officer said. Tell them to hold, Ji-won replied. Saturn will handle the first wave. We will need Jupiter for what comes next. The Morvath fleet broke through the Saturn grid after losing another 600 ships. They left behind clouds of debris and thousands of escape pods that human rescue ships would collect later. But the survivors pushed forward, determined to reach Earth. Surely the humans had exhausted their best defenses. Surely nothing else could stop them. They were wrong. As they approached Jupiter, what they had thought were atmospheric research stations opened fire. These were not small platforms but massive fortresses, each one capable of destroying a capital ship with a single shot. They used weapons that harvested energy directly from Jupiter's magnetic field, creating plasma bolts hot enough to melt through any known armor. Another 800 ships died in the Jupiter field. The Morvath fleet, once 5,000 strong, was now down to 3,200. They had not even reached Mars yet. Grand Marshal Kevthor realized with horror that he had led his fleet into a trap. The humans were not defending Earth. They were using Earth as bait, drawing the enemy fleet into a system turned into a massive weapons platform. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid was part of the defense grid. All ships prepare to retreat, he ordered. But it was too late. Mars opened its hangar bays. The red planet's surface split in 100 places, revealing underground facilities that stretched miles deep. From those facilities emerged the human home fleet. Not 200 ships, 2,000 ships. They had been hiding underground, waiting for the enemy to commit fully to the attack. Fleet Admiral Sunwoo commanded the counterattack from the Sol. His fleet moved with precision, cutting off retreat routes and dividing the enemy force into smaller groups. Each human ship targeted multiple enemies, using the quantum weapons and stealth technology that had destroyed the 7th Fleet. All ships, execute Formation Delta, Sunwoo ordered. Target their command ships first. Break their coordination. Lieutenant Minho, now serving aboard the Sol as Chief Weapons Officer, coordinated the quantum torpedo strikes. The weapons that had seemed like magic at New Busan were now deployed on a massive scale. Morvath dreadnoughts exploded from within. Cruisers went dark as their reactors were disabled. Entire squadrons vanished in coordinated strikes. The battle lasted 8 hours. 8 hours of systematic destruction. 8 hours of humanity demonstrating what 4 centuries of focused military development could achieve. The Morvath and their allies fought bravely, but they were fighting against an enemy who had turned warfare into a science. When it ended, 4,200 Morvath and allied ships had been destroyed. The remaining 800, too damaged to fight and too slow to flee, surrendered. Not a single human ship had been lost. Fleet Admiral Sunwoo broadcast a message across all galactic frequencies. His face appeared on displays across the known galaxy, from the Morvath capital to the neutral council worlds. This is Fleet Admiral Sunwoo of the Terran Defense Force. What you have witnessed today is the reason Terran space is prohibited. We did not develop this capability to conquer. We developed it to ensure we could never be conquered. The Morvath Empire was warned. They chose to ignore that warning. Now they face the consequences. On Earth, scientist Youngji gave a presentation to the surviving Morvath commanders. She was young, brilliant, and had spent her career developing the weapon systems that had just destroyed their fleet. Now she explained the truth behind humanity's power. While your species and others spread across the galaxy, we stayed in our home system, she said, her tone clinical and educational. We could have colonized hundreds of worlds. Instead, we fortified one solar system. Every moon became a factory. Every asteroid became a weapons platform. Every planet became a fortress. We spent 400 years and trillions of credits building a defense system that could destroy any invasion force regardless of size. She showed them technical diagrams. The Saturn grid, the Jupiter fortresses, the Mars fleet, the asteroid fabrication facilities, the lunar command centers, the Earth satellites. This is why we warned you. Not because we feared you, but because we knew what would happen if you attacked. Your empire sent 5,000 ships. We could have destroyed 50,000, 100,000. However many you brought, the result would be the same. Grand Marshal Kevthor sat among the prisoners, his pride shattered. Why, he asked. Why build such power and hide it? Why not use it to conquer? Youngji looked at him with something like pity. Because we remember what we were. Before we reached the stars, we fought each other for thousands of years. We built weapons designed to destroy ourselves. When we finally united and left Earth, we made a choice. We would never again turn our weapons on ourselves, and we would never spread our capacity for destruction across the galaxy. We quarantined ourselves, made our space prohibited, and hoped the galaxy would leave us in peace. But they never do, Commander Dohyun said, entering the room. Every few generations, some empire or collective or dominion decides that humanity is weak because we control so few systems. They ignore the warnings. They attack, and we are forced to demonstrate why those warnings existed. He looked at the Morvath commanders. Your empire is broken. You sent 60% of your military to attack Earth. Now you have almost nothing left to defend your own territory. Within weeks, species you conquered will rebel. Within months, your empire will collapse. All because your emperor was too arrogant to believe a warning. Captain Jiwon led a strike force deeper into Morvath space. Her orders were clear. 1 year after the Battle of Sol, the Galactic Council chamber looked different. The old hierarchy had been shattered. New representatives sat in places once reserved for the powerful. And at the center, where the Morvath delegation once dominated, now stood a simple podium bearing the emblem of Earth. Admiral Kira, promoted to Supreme Commander of Galactic Peace Enforcement, addressed the assembled species. She looked older now, tired from a year of managing the aftermath of war. But her voice remained steady and clear. The Morvath Empire is dissolved, she announced. Their former territories have been divided into autonomous regions under coalition administration. Former subject species are now free to govern themselves. The galaxy has a chance to build something better than what existed before. A representative from a species that had been conquered by the Morvath decades ago stood to speak. Commander, we are grateful for our freedom, but we must ask, having demonstrated such power, why does humanity not simply rule the galaxy? You could enforce peace through strength. No species could resist you. Kira smiled sadly. Because we tried that once on our own world. Before we reached the stars, humanity was divided into hundreds of nations. Strong nations conquered weak nations. Empires rose and fell. Millions died in wars of conquest and domination. We learned a lesson written in blood and fire. Peace enforced through conquest is not peace at all. It is merely the silence between rebellions. She walked to the chamber's main display and activated a historical file. Images of Earth's ancient wars appeared. Cities burning, soldiers dying, mushroom clouds rising over devastated landscapes. This is what we were. This is what we spent 10,000 years perfecting. The art of killing our own kind. When we finally left Earth and encountered the galaxy, we made a choice. We would never again use our capacity for destruction to dominate others. We would defend ourselves absolutely, but we would not conquer. Counselor Hanul, the human representative to the Reformed Council, stood to add his perspective. He was a diplomat, skilled in the careful language of politics. The prohibition on Terran space was never about isolationism. It was about quarantine. We knew what we were capable of. We knew that if we spread across the galaxy, our talent for warfare would spread with us, so we contained ourselves. We fortified one system and warned everyone to stay away. We hoped the galaxy would never need to see what humanity truly is. A representative from one of the species that had allied with the Morvath against humanity asked a question. But you showed mercy to us after we surrendered. You could have destroyed us completely. Why did you spare us? Governor Minji, the human administrator overseeing former Morvath territories, stood to answer. She was young for such an important position, but she had proven herself capable during the reconstruction efforts, because the goal was never destruction. The goal was peace. The Morvath Empire needed to be stopped, but the Morvath people did not need to be exterminated. You allied with them out of fear or greed or desperation, but you were not the architects of the war. When you surrendered, you became our responsibility. We will help you rebuild. We will help you create stable governments. We will give you the chance to be better than you were. In a secure facility on Earth, former Emperor Thralvex sat in a comfortable cell. He was not tortured or abused. He had access to books, entertainment, communication with his family. But he was not free. He would stand trial for war crimes, for the unnecessary deaths of millions of his own soldiers who had followed him into a war they could not win. He watched news broadcasts from his former empire. What he saw shocked him. The Morvath people were not suffering under human occupation. Infrastructure was being rebuilt. Schools were being opened. Hospitals were being established. Trade was flowing more freely than it had under his rule. His subjects, freed from constant military expansion and crushing taxes, were actually prospering. A human guard brought him his daily meal. I don't understand, Thralvex said to the guard. You destroyed my empire. Why are you helping my people? The guard, a young soldier named Taejin, sat down across from him. Because your empire was the problem, not your people. The system you built required constant conquest to survive. It consumed resources and lives for no purpose except expansion. We removed that system. Now your people can focus on building instead of conquering. But how can you trust us? Thralvex asked. We tried to destroy you. We laughed at your warnings. Why not simply eliminate us as a threat? Taejin considered the question. On Earth we have a saying, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. If we destroyed every species that threatened us, we would become the very thing we fought against. We would become conquerors. Instead, we try to break the cycle. We show mercy when we can. We help when we are able. We prove that strength does not have to mean cruelty. Colonel Do-hyun, promoted after the war, now commanded the Coalition Defense Training Academy. His job was to train mixed-species military forces according to human standards. He walked through the training grounds, watching Morvath soldiers drill alongside former enemies. Species that had fought each other for generations now learned to work together. The key is not teaching them how to fight, he explained to a visiting dignitary. They already know how to fight. The key is teaching them why to fight. They need to understand that military force exists to protect peace, not to enable conquest. That discipline matters more than aggression. That mercy is not weakness. A Morvath trainee approached him with a question. Colonel, we studied the Battle of Seoul. Your fleet outnumbered us, but you still lost 800 of your ships that surrendered. Why not destroy them? You had the power. Do-hyun looked at the young Morvath. Because they surrendered. In human military philosophy, once an enemy surrenders, they are no longer an enemy. They become prisoners of war, entitled to certain protections. We destroyed your attacking fleet because they were a threat. We spared the survivors because they were not. That distinction matters. On the colony world of New Busan, life had returned to normal. Administrator Yoonji stood at a memorial to those who had died in the brief battle 1 year ago. It was a simple monument, listing the names of civilians killed by debris from destroyed Morvath ships. 37 names. 37 people who died because an empire ignored a warning. A Morvath merchant approached her at the memorial. He was one of thousands who now lived and worked in the colony, participating in trade and cultural exchange. Administrator, I wanted to apologize. My government killed these people. I know my apology means little, but I needed to say it. Yoonji turned to him. Your government killed them, not you. You are not responsible for the actions of leaders you could not control. What matters now is what you choose to do. Do you work for peace? Do you build instead of destroy? That is how you honor these dead. Not with apologies, but with actions. Captain Ji-won now commanded a task force protecting trade routes in former Morvath space. Pirates and warlords had emerged in the power vacuum, and her job was to eliminate them. She sat in her ready room, reviewing mission reports when Lieutenant Minho brought her troubling news. Captain, We have detected a fleet assembling in the outer reaches. Intelligence suggests they are remnants of the Morvath military, planning to restart the war. G1 sighed. There were always holdouts, true believers who could not accept that the old order was gone. How many ships? 50, maybe 60. All older vessels, badly maintained. Offer them amnesty if they surrender, G1 ordered. Make it clear we do not want to fight, but if they refuse, eliminate them quickly. Do not give them time to inspire others. The offer was made. Most of the fleet surrendered, their crews tired of fighting a lost cause. The few who refused were destroyed in a brief engagement. No human ships were damaged. It was barely worth mentioning in the daily reports. Admiral Kira stood before the council once more, presenting the new Galactic Constitution. It was a document written by representatives from 40 species, outlining principles for peaceful coexistence and conflict resolution. The key provision was simple. No species could claim territory by force. Expansion would come through negotiation and agreement, not conquest. This is the Terran Protocol, she explained. It is based on principles humanity developed after our own global wars. We learned that lasting peace cannot be imposed by force. It must be built on mutual respect and shared benefit. We offer this system to the galaxy. The council debated for weeks. Some species worried that the protocol limited their freedom. Others feared that humanity was simply imposing a different kind of empire, one of rules rather than fleets. But eventually, 43 species ratified the document. It was not unanimous and enforcement would be difficult, but it was a start. The prohibition on Terran space was officially lifted. Any species could now visit the Sol system, subject to standard diplomatic protocols. Trade missions and cultural exchanges began to arrive. Species that had feared humanity for generations sent ambassadors to see the legendary fortifications of Earth. What they found surprised them. The Saturn grid was still there, but inactive. The Jupiter fortresses were being converted into research stations. The Mars fleet remained, but most ships were in storage. Earth's defense satellites were reduced to 10% of wartime levels.